I'm a 22-year-old high school graduate with about a year of community college, paying for it out of my own pocket because my parents made too much money for me to get government assistance, but not enough to actually help me. And at the end of the day, it ended up just making more sense for me to come on down to this part of the world. And if you are elected, what sort of time frame do you expect it might be reasonable to get a system in place that allows me to return to my country and contribute to my country's economy?
This is what we have proposed, Alex. What I've said is that it is insane, and I use that word quite advisedly, that we have hundreds of thousands of bright young people in this country who are qualified, who are hardworking, who want to get a higher education, but are unable to do so because of the lack of income in their families. And you just made that case. So we have this, and you're in New Zealand because of that. These people are these young people are not only being denied the opportunity in many cases to make it to the middle class, but they are unable to contribute their intellectual capabilities to improving life in our country. They're unable to become the scientists, the doctors, the engineers, the teachers, the police officers that we need because they're not getting the education they require. That's insane. And then you got millions more who are leaving school deeply in debt, $50,000, $100,000. If you're a dentist, it may be $300,000 or $400,000, and they're burdened with this incredible debt at high interest rates for decades. So we have introduced legislation, which I will fight for as President of the United States, that makes tuition free at all public colleges and universities in America, and number two, substantially lowers interest rates on student debt. I think that is not only the right thing to do from the perspective of the individuals impacted, it is absolutely imperative for the future of this country if we are to have the best educated workforce in the world and create the economy that we need in the future. I am 100% against educational privatization, of which the right wing in this country is pushing very hard. They want to privatize everything under the sun, including our military and our public services and Social Security and public education as well. So it goes without saying that I am strongly opposed to that. But what I will also tell you, Victoria, is that we're going to do everything that we can to end No Child Left Behind, and the burden that many teachers and students are under today, where schools are teaching kids to take tests rather than giving them the quality education that they need. And I'm on the committee that deals with that, so we're hopefully going to end this No Child Left Behind and come up with a system that works much better for the kids and the teachers.
How will you convince the banks to help people like me?
It's not a question of convincing the banks, it's a question of changing the law. What Jesse is talking about is the absurdity of folks today who have student debt. We have over $1 trillion in student debt from millions of Americans who are paying 6, 8, 10%. They cannot, by law, refinance. They're stuck with that indefinitely. The legislation that I have offered will, in fact, allow Jesse to refinance. Right now, you can refinance your home, your mortgage, at 2, 3, 4%, depending on where you live, and yet people are stuck with 8, 10, 12% interest rates on their student debt. That's pretty crazy. And then in addition to that, the government, which now holds much of that debt, is making huge profits on those high interest rates. Allow people to refinance, and the government profiteering on student debt. We can lower interest rates very, very significantly, and that's what my legislation does.
How would your plan help us? Us who have these loans, who are student loan voters?
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. And I know a little bit about what your governor did. I try to keep up with that. And it was really so disappointing. He basically slashed funding for colleges and universities. He eliminated some of the loan and scholarship programs for low-income Wisconsin students. He has made it more expensive and harder for people in Wisconsin to send their kids to college pay the freight or for the kid to have to do it himself or herself. But one of the areas that you alluded to that really surprised me is his refusal to allow the payments on student loans to be deducted from your state income tax, right? So in effect, he said no to lowering both student loan and tax burdens on people who have student debt. I just think that's absolutely the wrong direction. And for me, it's pretty simple. Under my plan, my college compact, you will be able to refinance all of your debt, public and private. You'll be able to consolidate into public programs because, as I said in my remarks, I don't want the federal government making money any longer off of people paying their student debts. It should be an investment. And so I am very committed to having you be able, if you're at 7%, get it down to what the interest rate now is, because you can refinance your car, you can refinance your home. You ought to be able to refinance your student debt, which for many people is by far their biggest obligation. I also want more people to take advantage, which is why I'm going to streamline and consolidate the programs for income-based repayment. Income-based repayment is a way of getting costs down for a lot of people with student debt, but not enough people know about it. So in addition to refinancing, you go into an income-based repayment program and you would lower your monthly payment to a percentage of your income. Then I want to put an end date. If you are current and you are paying what you're supposed to pay, especially after you've been refinanced, you're doing income-based repayment, then at the end of 10 years, if you're doing public service work, or the end of 20 years, the loan should be forgiven. Now, if you are not, if you're not pulling your weight, you know, if you're in default and you're not paying what you should pay, it's going to take you longer because we're going to have to get you current. We're going to have to get you in a program that will help you better understand how to deal with all of your other obligations. But I can tell you that for me, this approach is a win-win-win. It's a win for the individuals and their families because a lot of families, parents and grandparents, guarantee these loans. I've had a number of people tell me as grandparents that they're guaranteeing their grandchildren's student loans. Some grandparents have taken out mortgages in order to do that. So this is not just about the individual. This is about a whole family committed to your education. So I want to relieve the burdens. Secondly, I want states to figure out ways to make the right decisions about decreasing costs. There are a lot of studies about what really adds to your college experience and what doesn't. You know, I hear and read that, you know, the governor of your state, he's just basically taken a big meat cleaver, you know, just cut, as opposed to saying, you know, how are we going to get those costs down? And there's some clever ideas. You know, I'll give you one, because in my plan, I do expect students to work at least 10 hours a week. You know, I think that's important because you know, when I went to college, when I went to law school, I worked, and it was a good experience. It taught me a lot. I want more people to understand what role each can play, and for our country, it's really important we help people succeed with their education, make their contribution, and in fact, China has now made an announcement they want to get 200 million college graduates. Why? Because they look at the same statistics we do. We have an increasingly competitive global economy, and it's really important you have the skills to be competitive. So this is not just a nice thing to do for students and families. It's not just important to hold colleges and universities and states accountable. This is about our economy, how competitive and successful we can be. So I'll have more to say about your governor as we move forward, but I think that's a very good example of what I disagree with.